Hello and welcome to the Discover History YouTube channel, and hopefully you are following the march to the Battle of Worcester, which was fought on the 3rd of September 1651. So today is the 7th of August and you're probably thinking what happened at that time, at the time of the 17th century, at the time of the Third Civil War. Well, interestingly, on the 7th of August 1651, Oliver Cromwell personally leaves Leith in Scotland to pursue the Royalist army that are now into the north of England. Interesting fact, Oliver Cromwell was up in Scotland purely because his army was victorious on the 3rd of September 1650. That was at the Battle of Dunbar, and the army was really occupying Scotland. So very simply, Oliver Cromwell, being based in Leith, decided it was now time for the new model army to come out and fight. So Lambert is obviously shadowing the Royalist army, especially now they've crossed the border into England. But like I said, Oliver Cromwell has now left Leith and is moving with the main body of the new model army into the southern parts of Scotland, and then will also cross over the border into England as well, in hot pursuit, shall we say, really, literally on a day like this. An interesting fact also about the Royalist army is as soon as they cross the border at Carlisle, the Duke of Buckingham, one of the very few English royalists in the army, got rather annoyed because he actually thought, and it was already sort of talked about anyway, that the Duke of Hamilton would command the Royalist army in Scotland as it was manoeuvring south. And the plan was the Duke of Buckingham would take command as soon as it entered England. He would now be the commander of the Royalist army for Charles. The only problem is Charles did not want to stand Hamilton down. And remember, there was a lot of infighting anyway. So very simply, the Duke of Hamilton was still in command of this Royalist army. So the Duke of Buckingham is unbelievably unhappy. The other really important thing that happens on the 7th of August 1651 is Oliver Cromwell writes a letter, a set of orders that is sent to the north of England, and it basically musters all the militias in the north. Now, if you've never heard of the militias, the other word for them, the trained band, I'll just explain it. So this is a drawing of a member of the Parliament Militia. Now, what I will draw your attention to here is these are not full-time professionals. The best thing to explain or to compare it with is someone like the Home Guard in the Second World War, basically, or even the VTC, the Volunteer Training Corps in the First World War, the Home Guard of World War One. So these men are not professional fighters. So these would be your typical farm labourer. So he could be a ploughman, he could maybe be a shepherd, he could be anything. He could even live in one of the cities, in one of the towns, and he could be a wool weaver or even a merchant. It brought in all sorts of society, basically, rich and poor. So he's a member of the militia, and the old name, really old name for these, was the trained band, because as the name suggests, they were meant to come together on a regular basis, a bit like the Home Guard, and practice what was called their manoeuvres, basically, their drills. So if they were a pikeman, they would turn up, possibly in armour. Once again, they had to provide their own, or the town or city had to provide it for them. And they would go through the drill for using the pike, for example. And if they were a musketeer, like this case here, they would practice the manoeuvres with the musket. And it's funny because at times they were given the privilege of using black powder, gunpowder. Most of the time they would just have to go through the drills, importantly, so they wouldn't waste gunpowder, shot, and obviously the slow match that was used to light the musket. So Oliver Cromwell on the 7th of August 1651 is asked all these local militias of the north to muster. So as Charles's army was starting to come down through the north, people in towns and cities, the mayors, the aldermen of the towns and cities, would have called for the militia to form, and they would have been called up, they would have turned up, and they would have been given their arm or picked up their musket or their pikes, and they would have prepared for the royalist army. Now, the interesting thing is, Cromwell only ordered them to muster. He ordered them not to engage with the enemy at all, and that's the same order that he gave to Lambert. It's also the same order that he's given his new model army. They are to shadow the royalist army, and they're not to engage them yet. Some people think that was down to the fact that Oliver Cromwell's army was big, but it was not big enough to create a decisive victory. It makes you wonder really what sort of strength it was. We know by the time of the Battle of Worcester it was quite a large force, so at the moment it's probably not as big. It's probably about the same size as Charles's army, which was around about 10,000 at this point. So the 7th of August 1651 is an important one. Cromwell is left Leith with the main new model army. They're starting to manoeuvre down into the southern parts of Scotland and will also cross the border. Lambert is obviously shadowing the royalist army as they move south, and the Duke of Buckingham is a little bit annoyed because Hamilton is still in charge of the royalist army. He's quite annoyed about that one, to be fair. So hopefully you are not struggling too much in the heat today. It's very unusual for us. We're usually working with lots and lots of wool on at an event, for example, an English heritage event somewhere, and it's very unusual to be wearing modern clothes and being able to drink modern cool drinks and sit around in the shade for a change, really. Anyway, stay safe this weekend. Remember the rules laid down by the government regarding COVID-19, and remember, like and share our posts. Remember to share away on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram also. Keep in touch with the march to Worcester, and the best way of doing that, like I said, is subscribing and keep an eye on our playlist under the title Battle of Worcester. Anyway, on that note, stay safe and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.